Hi everyone. So today's lesson is actually a pretty short lesson. We're going to talk about estimating roots from graphs and tables. Now in the next few days we're going to be talking about more exact ways to find roots. There are lots of different ways to find roots, but we're kind of tiptoeing into it. And actually, like I said, today's lesson is going to be super short. I'm pretty much going to teach it all through this first example. So take a second. If you need to have the video paused so that you can copy this down, please do so. And this is where we're going to start. So this is a polynomial, okay? We've been working with these all throughout this chapter. And it says I just want to sketch what this would look like on this particular window. So I'm going to go into my calculator. Now I kind of cheated here. Hold on, my calculator's not cooperating, sorry. Okay, so in my calculator, I'm typing in exactly what I have here. So x to the fourth minus 4x to the third minus 20x squared plus 61x plus 36. I do very strongly encourage you to be doing this along with me. So now would be another great time to pause if you need some time to type this into your calculator. I'm going to go ahead and adjust my window here. So I want my window to go on the x's from negative 10 to 10, which it already does. If you're on a standard window, it should already be there. If you have an adjusted window for something else, you're going to want to fix it. So negative 10 to 10. And then for my y min and my y max, I want to go negative 500 to 500. Okay. And then I just want to hit graph and see the pretty picture. And it should look something like this, kind of like a crazy W. And I want to sort of sketch that on my paper, okay? So I'm going to, let's see, move this up here. Looks like we drop down through the axis, come back up, down again, probably could have gone a little further over there, and then up like that. But this is good enough, okay? So this is sort of what my graph looks like. Okay, I dipped a little too low there and a little too high there. But so what we are talking about today is the zeros of the function. And we've talked about zeros before. We had called them roots. Roots are the same thing as zeros. But that's the x-intercepts. That's the places where we're crossing the x-axis. Okay, and so these, again, what I just circled there in pink are called the zeros, otherwise known as the roots. Okay? And that's what our focus today is on, is figuring out where those spots are at. Okay? And today, again, we're just kind of estimating from graphs. We're going to talk about how tables can help us, things like that. Okay? Okay, so the first thing I want you to notice is that the zeros happen anytime your graph crosses, like from the positive land up here to the negative land down here, or vice versa when we cross from negative to positive. So these occur, roots and zeros occur when we cross from positive to negative or from negative to positive. And that means if I can see the values of this graph, like from your table, let's say, if I go to the table on my calculator, okay, I can see where do I cross over from negative to positive and then again from positive to negative. So sometimes you're going to be asked questions where you're not even being asked to give an exact value, but where you're asked where would these zeros happen or where would these roots happen. And so for example, let's see, let me make sure I get the, okay. So this one I'm in my table way up here at negative 8, okay, and up there I'm in positive land, and I think if I kept going, yeah, these are just going to keep getting positive because you can see on my picture that from here it just goes straight up, right? So those numbers are going to keep getting bigger. I want to look at where it changes from positive to negative, okay? So right here between negative 5 and negative 4, I can see that I must have a root. So this root here is somewhere between negative 5 and negative 4. I guess I really shouldn't use the addition symbol when I'm doing math class, but it's somewhere between negative 5 and negative 4. That's if you were asked, like, this root is between which two numbers. And then the next one would be this one here, And that is where we cross from negative back up to positive. So again, looking in my table, I'm going to scroll down a ways. Oh, and right there, from -1 to 0, I jumped from -40 to +36. So this root right here is somewhere between, what did I say, as far as x values, it would be between -1 and 0. -1 and 0 is where that one would be located, roughly. Okay. Now this next one is when I'm going from positive back down to negative. So again, if I'm looking at the patterns in my table, I'm getting bigger, and then I'm dropping lower, and then right here again, I drop from positive to negative. That's between 3 and 4. So this would be between 3 and 4. And then again, I dip down into the negatives and then come back up into the positives. So this 0 right here would be where I switch back to positives, and that looks like between 5 and 6. Okay, so sometimes that's all you're asked for. Sometimes you are just asked, you know, your roots are between this number and this number. Just so you know, this is your homework right here. And this question right here, number 5, now it says to complete the table. So on this one, I would type this into your calculator and look at the table and then fill these in. But then use your table to tell how many zeros you have. So like on ours, we would say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 zeros. And for each 0, indicate the 2 consecutive integers between which the 0 must lie. That's what we were just doing. We were saying, hey, we switched from positive to negative or negative to positive. That's where my 0 must be. Okay? So that's kind of the first most general way that we can look at roots and zeros, is just kind of looking at either a graph or a table and seeing when do you see it cross that 0 line. When do you see it go from positive to negative or negative to positive? Okay? It might ask you to actually figure out where they are. And again, we don't have a super mathematical way to do this yet. We are going to get to that later on. But for right now, we're just going to estimate from our calculator. So our table is helpful in helping us narrow it down. Okay, like just looking at where I'm at in the table right now, we know somewhere between 5 and 6 I'm going to hit one. But that doesn't mean it's 5.5. Okay, it could be 5.1. It could be 5 point whatever. It's somewhere between 5 and 6. So one of your options for this would be to just use the trace key. Whoops, I didn't mean to hit second. Just the trace key. Okay? And when you hit trace, you should see, let's see, a little blinking cursor. Mine's hard to see. Mine's right in the middle. Yours might be somewhere different. And you can use the left and right arrows to kind of follow along the graph. Okay? And you'll notice that your coordinates are changing down here. You want to try to get your y value as close to 0 as you possibly can. Now, our graph is pretty zoomed in. I mean, or maybe I guess I should say pretty zoomed out. This is 500 and negative 500 up here. So it looks, I mean, the closest we can get here to 0 is -6. That's not great. But so this one that we said is between -5 and -4 is actually really close to -4, -4.04. Okay? I could trace along this way until I get a little closer to that other one. Okay. This one, let's see, the y value, the closest I can get is 6.7, and that looks like -0.4. That would be this one that's between -1 and 0. Okay, so that's one way to get them. Again, that's not super accurate if if your window is really wide. Okay, if you have a really big range on your window, like we have from -500 to +500, it's going to be harder to do. Let's just for fun, let's go in our window and let's maybe try -100 and +100. I want you to see that might get us to be a little bit more specific. Now you can see we kind of lose that bottom bump of the graph, okay? But our zeros are a lot easier to see here, okay? So if I hit trace again and I walk along the graph, I'm trying to go back to that far left one. It's still jumping me a lot. It's at -6 and then it jumps to 50. So yeah, that trace is a little bit hard to control. Okay, but this would be close. Okay, this would be a good ballpark estimate. Your calculator actually has a way to determine the zeros, okay? And that's under that calc menu that we've used before. That's up above the trace key. So that's when we're going to hit second trace and use this option 2, 0. Now you may want to watch me through the first one. So I'm going to go to 0. And do you remember before when we were looking for maximums, we had a left bound, right bound? Okay, we're going to do the same thing here. But this is sort of weird because I always want to think of this as upper bound and lower bound. Like I want to go above the line and below the line. But really, if you think about how a graph works, I mean, this is really slanting out this way. I mean, on the picture, this might be better. So this would be like to the left over here, and this would be to the right over here, because this is further to the left and this is further to the right. Okay? So for left bound, I'm going to go somewhere to the left of the point I'm looking for. So I'm looking for this. I know which point I want. I want that point right there. So I'm going to the left and hit enter. And then right bound, I just want to move to make sure my cursor goes past the x-axis. And hit enter again. And then it says guess. And this is going to be a way more accurate reading. So see this 2e negative 11? That means your y value right there is like 0.0000, 10 zeros, and then a 2. Okay, that's awfully close to 0, which is what we wanted. We wanted our y value to be 0. So we are pretty confident that this 0 that we said was between -5 and -4 is actually at -4.06. Okay. Then I can go second calc 0, which is the second one. And again, I'm going over to this one now, okay? And my left is going to be somewhere over here, and my right is going to be somewhere over here. So I'm going to move to where I'm just to the left of that spot. Where am I? Where's my cursor? There it is. I'm using the left and right arrows to control here, not the up and down. Sometimes, especially on these like parts that look vertical, people want to do up and down, but you're still using left and right. So that's to the left of my 0. And then I go a little bit to the right until I go past the line and hit enter again. And then I'm going to hit enter on guess. And again, that time the y value is exactly 0, which is really what we want, okay? But your calculator sometimes is just like a teeny smidge off. Probably won't make a difference, but. And that 0 is at -0.51. That would be this one that's between -1 and 0. That one is at -0.51. Okay? So by the way, what we're saying here is that the x-intercepts are at -4.06 and at -0.51. So these are values for x, okay, where the graph crosses the axis. Let's find this one that's between the 3 and the 4. So I would calculate the 0. I'm moving until I'm just to the left, which again I think of as above, okay? And then to the right, I want to make sure I move down below the line. Your calculator needs to see that you're going from positive to negative in order to find the 0. So you want the first place you choose to be in positive land. Well, it doesn't matter first or second, but you want one of the places you choose to be positive, one of the places to be negative. Hit guess. And that one is at 3.2. Again, that's a super, super tiny number. Essentially, that's equal to 0. So my one that's between 3 and 4 is actually at 3.2. Okay, so my other x-intercept would be at 3.2. Okay. And just real quick, let's go ahead and find the one between 5 and 6. So I'm going to move until I'm just to the left of the line, hit enter. Move till I'm just to the right of the line and hit enter, and then hit enter one more time. Oops, moved up into that glare. And I'm at 5.38. Okay, so this one that's between 5 and 6, 5.38. Okay, and that's it. Those are our 4 zeros for this function. And that's really what this lesson is all about, is just being able to find those zeros. We're going to learn a lot more about those zeros in the next couple of lessons. I do want to real quick just run through that process one more time, because I realized as I was doing it that you probably couldn't see what buttons I was pushing down there, down below. So in case you didn't follow me there, let me try this one more time. So I'm going to find this 0 again. Okay, so I'm going to hit second calc Option 2 is 0. I'm going to use my left arrow to move to where I'm to the left of the, it's not a bump this time, it's the place where it crosses the x-axis. So this is the point I'm looking for. I'm moving, so I'm slightly to the left of that and hitting enter. Then it changes and asks me for the right bound, so I move to the right somewhere and hit enter. And then when it says guess, you hit enter one more time, and the answer you're looking for is this x value. Okay? And again, it should be where y is either exactly equal to 0 or awfully, awfully close to 0. Okay? Okay, so again, just to recap on your homework, so we kind of already talked about number 5. Looking at 1 through 4, 1 and 2 says estimate the real zeros described by the function to the nearest tenth. By the way, all of these numbers we found were real numbers. Technically, graphs can have what are called complex roots. You don't have to worry about those yet. Okay, the real roots are the ones you can actually physically see on the graph. Okay, so for these, I would just type these in the calculator and do the calc 0 thing that we just did. Okay, and on these ones, it's giving you a graph, and notice it says determine its integer zeros. That means that these ones have zeros that are nice, happy whole numbers, and you should be able to read them right off the graph. Okay. I want to talk about this situation on Monday when it just barely touches. That does count as a 0, but there's something special about that. But we'll talk about that on Monday. The rest of this I really think you should be okay on, as long as you get the thing about when the y values change from positive to negative or negative to positive, that's where a 0 would be. Okay, and then in your calculator you can do the calc 0 option, do left bound, right bound, and then that'll get you your 0. Okay? That's really it for today. You have a whopping 5 problems for homework. Good luck and have a great weekend.